Hello, my name is Jeff Phillips, and I'm a doctoral student at East Tennessee State University in the Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis program. This presentation is part of my final project for ELPA 7120, History of American Higher Education. In this presentation, I will address how World War II impacted American higher education. Let's begin. This is the agenda that I will follow during the presentation. I will provide the background on the U.S. participation in World War II, describe the education programs that were developed for soldiers, explain the impacts of the GI Bill, discuss how accreditation gained in importance, present the lead up to the American Civil Rights Movement, and finally I will address the directed question that asks what the future of American higher education will look like. For background, the United States entered World War II in 1941 and concluded its participation in 1945. And the war effort was a major historical event that helped to shape a generation of Americans, and this includes higher education. It is important to understand the magnitude of the U.S. participation to fully realize why World War II affected all aspects of American lives. The U.S. saw more than 16 million citizens serving in the armed forces during this period, with 75% of men aged 18 to 24, 35% of men aged 25 to 29, and 25% of men aged 30 to 34, all serving in the military at some point of the war. With the majority of the population that would normally attend colleges and universities serving in the armed forces, colleges and universities would struggle to maintain student numbers and to cover operating expenses. During the war, American colleges and universities contributed significantly to the war effort by providing educated students that served as leaders during combat, as well as other experts that taught language, culture, medicine, and engineering topics for deploying soldiers. During the early 1940s, the U.S. Army began planning and preparing for possible deployment in support of allies in Europe who were already engaged in World War II. As part of that preparation, the Army Research Branch conducted multiple surveys of the Army's troops and learned valuable information about the importance of education. Survey data indicated that soldiers wanted continuous education, and the Army Research Branch even concluded that more educational opportunities resulted in higher performing and better quality soldiers. The Army Research Branch published their findings in multiple internal Army reports that were circulated throughout the senior levels of leadership. The reports explained that better educated soldiers were more likely to choose combat duty, were more willing to get involved in international affairs, could successfully function in the military environment, had more commitment to the war, felt more purpose in serving in the military, and even felt that they should have been drafted. Reports also concluded that less educated soldiers were 4 times more likely to go absent without leave or to suffer from a nervous breakdown. Whether the Army Research Branch reports were completely accurate or not, the Army's leadership still revamped its educational training program in order to provide continuous education due to the potential benefits. Soldiers were provided educational opportunities through initial orientation programs, educational instruction programs on the battlefield, and correspondence courses developed in conjunction with colleges and universities. The programs designed to support the war effort were successful, and as the war drew closer to an end, the Army's leaders started looking for ways to tailor the educational programs to support the soldiers as they transitioned back to civilian life. The educational programs were designed to help soldiers move through the 3 psychological stages of celebration, letdown, and restoration. This concern for soldiers' readjustment led to the creation of the Service Members Readjustment Act of 1944, which would later be known as the GI Bill of Rights. The 1944 GI Bill was very different than previous versions of legislation written to support the transition of veterans back to civilian life. Previous legislation provided cash bonuses and pension programs. However, this version provided a comprehensive program that attempted to promote emotional, educational, and financial well-being. It is estimated that 7.8 million World War II veterans used the educational and training benefits, with 2.2 million entering colleges or universities. While veterans certainly benefited from the GI Bill, the American colleges and universities benefited as well. At the conclusion of the war, U.S. colleges and universities were operating with half of their pre-war student enrollment and desperately needed more students. In 1948, veterans made up approximately 50% of the college student body nationwide, and by 1949, colleges and universities experienced record enrollments totaling 2.5 million. For many years before World War II, many colleges and universities used independent certifying bodies to recognize adherence to maintaining suitable standards and providing a level of quality. But accreditation was even more important after World War II. Due to the increased allocations of federal funding, the U.S. government placed a stronger reliance on accreditation to ensure that taxpayer money was widely invested by emphasizing quality assurance and quality improvement in higher education. Today, more than 7,000 colleges and universities participate in the accreditation process, and the private accreditation bodies ensure that $150 billion per year of federal funding is safeguarded. Some researchers have pointed out that the U.S.'s participation was critical in setting the conditions for the American Civil Rights Movement that is normally characterized by the 1960s. During the 1940s, African Americans did not have the right to vote, purchase a house, or to attend very many schools. However, African Americans were drafted to serve in the armed forces in order to defend democracy abroad. Starting in 1942, many African American newspapers began calling for double V, meaning victory overseas as well as victory at home. Part of the victory at home would include greater access to higher education. In 1947, the President's Commission on Higher Education began calling for the end of discrimination at colleges and universities. The Commission highlighted the need for educated workers during World War II as an example of why higher education needed to be more accessible to all. The GI Bill's education benefits were utilized heavily by African American veterans following World War II. While legalized segregation limited attendance at many elite schools, African American college enrollments tripled between 1940 and 1950. For this portion of the presentation, I was asked to describe the future of American higher education, and my answer is quite simply similar, meaning ever-changing. The history of higher education united in America includes times of prosperity and times of want. Events such as wars, economic depressions, and times of prosperity have affected higher education since the beginning. But our colleges and universities are resilient. They adjust, they change, they stay the same, whatever it takes to stay relevant. With my background in business, I immediately went through the SWOT analysis to examine the current environment for higher education. There are strengths. Higher education is still recognized as both public and private good. Established institutions that are accredited, they have high schools that provide good preparation for potential college students. The weaknesses, the cost of tuition is high and families struggle to pay. The opportunities, they offer more online programs to increase the student pool. Some schools should expand or limit their curriculum to account for regional needs. Finally, some schools will need to eliminate bureaucracy and administrative bloat to operate within operating budgets. There are threats. A growing economy can be a threat. The for-profits are growing rapidly, and online schools allow other schools to take students that would normally go to a regular school. All in all, these factors are not new. Things will be similar and ever-changing. Enduring impacts from the United States participation in World War II include an emphasis placed on continuous education for the armed forces, the establishment of the GI Bill, a renewed focus on college and university accreditation, and the formation of the American Civil Rights Movement. These are the references that I used to prepare the final paper in this presentation. I hope that you found this presentation insightful, and I thank you for taking the time to listen.